Hello, School Transportation Nation. Tony Corpin here. We're welcoming you back to the podcast brought to you by TransFinder, the leader in school bus routing. We have our friends at Cummins powering customers through innovation and dependability, and School Radio, your source for reliable radio communications. I have with me today Mr. Ryan Gray and Taylor Ekbatani, editorial dynamic duo. Welcome, guys.
Hey, Tony, it's great to be back on the Nation and freshly back from STN EXPO Indianapolis.
Yeah, I finally got some beauty sleep after a great week that we had, so it's good to be back.
I still need my beauty sleep. I need a lot to catch up on that. But yeah, long week, good week. Started out there on June 2nd. We had tons of training out there, Tony. It was just great conversations. Really, everyone that was there was super engaged. So really looking forward to unpacking that further for everyone. I know coming up here in July, we're going to have a photo spread of showing all the great action that happened there in Indianapolis. And of course, we have tons of articles that we wrote. Taylor writing a lion's share of them out there. So there was a ton of great conversations, a ton of great training and networking opportunities.
Yeah, guys, stnonline.com. You'll see all the content on the website. Click around. There's some videos on there. Lots of great recaps. I saw a photo gallery on there. I saw Greg Jackson, former STN Transportation Director of the Year, who is now working over at School Bus Logistics, and Robert Jacobus, president as well. So always great to see those guys roaming the aisleways and walking around, and lots of familiar faces at the trade show. We had about 60 exhibitors. Great group of people. We did a great welcome party at Howl at the Moon with Safety Vision. It was a packed house, couple hundred people. Definitely a great event. Before we dive deeper into the conversation, want to bring you a message from TransFinder. Guys, have you ever seen a car commercial? They're always saying that the new model is sportier, faster, better. Well, the folks at TransFinder say that's the way to look at their new and improved Service Finder solution. It has the same name, but everything about the new Service Finder is better, faster, sleeker, more intuitive. Service Finder is the next generation of fleet and asset management software. It's browser-based and will make your fleet productive and cost-effective. Service Finder reduces burdensome paperwork, tracks your costs, and will help keep you from missing critical repairs. Let's face it, buses aren't cheap. You need to keep them running efficiently and lasting longer to get the most out of your investment. To learn more about Service Finder, visit transfinder.com or email them at marketing@transfinder.com or give them a call at 800-373-3609. That's 800-373-3609. Ryan, talk to me. STN Expo had just so many great sessions that you put together. I know keynote speaker Patrick Mulick, he talked all about de-escalation, really interesting dialogue. I know the attendees were buzzing about him. We also had Sylvie DeGiusto that did a really interactive session about looking at yourself, how you look, your appearance, what people think of you. She had some really interesting interactive videos where they had two twins and one was chewing gum, one was not, and people were making snap judgments, the unconscious bias that we all have, and the conscious mind versus the unconscious mind, which apparently 95% of our minds are unconscious, right? So people have these unconscious bias, which is super interesting to me. I think, we can apply that in our personal life. You can apply it in your professional life. It just has a lot of meaning, a lot of viability that you can take back and apply in your school transportation operation to really say, we have a driver shortage. Well, clearly people have an unconscious bias against school transportation because if they don't want to work there, we got some issue. So how do we address that? How do we address what people think of us as an industry, think of us as an operation, think of us as an individual or a boss, right? There's just so many ways to unpack that. What were your kind of big takeaways, Ryan?
Yeah, well, from Sylvie's talk, certainly at the Transportation Director Summit the day before her keynote, I missed about half the day because I was out at our National School Bus Inspector Training hands-on sessions out in Brownsburg Consolidated School District. But when I got there, one of the things that struck me was there was a lot of conversations about the professionalism of school bus drivers, a lot of talk about uniforms and HR issues. And then it bled right into her conversation the next day with, like you were talking about, how people perceive you. And one of the things that she said at her keynote was like, "This is you. Don't change." She was not trying to advise people to change themselves. Don't change your personality. Be you, but recognize the foot that you put forward, that you choose, how you choose to show yourself does have an impact. And specifically for school bus drivers, parents look to them they want to trust that these drivers are going to be able to get their kids to and from school safely. And Sylvie's talk was all about, your personality, your demeanor, your outward appearance, does that reflect trustworthiness? So it was really interesting, and it definitely got folks up out of their seats. Like you talked about, it was some interactive exercises, walking around the room, and we were writing down on little mailing labels one word that we think describes someone that we knew, and we'd walk up to them, or maybe even someone we didn't know, but just seeing them, and we'd slap it on their back. And then afterwards, we'd all peel it off our backs, and we would write it down. She gave us a little worksheet to fill out. And it was really interesting to see how both you perceive yourself and how it matches how others perceive you, and what is different and what is similar.
Yeah, and I'm just going to jump in for a second. The one thing that stood out to me is that she kept saying, regardless of how much good or how much positive there is, like, people really focus on that one negative interaction. And so I was talking to some people after her presentation, and I was like, school transportation is more often than not in the news for something negative, right? There's a crash or something happened, and there's so many positive things that happen in school transportation every single day. So I was talking with Kay Cornelius, and she's the director of transportation for St. Louis County Schools in Minnesota. And she was like, we just need to keep sharing the positive just over and over. And as transportation directors, I think that's such a huge thing, is to be able to share those positive stories from your school bus drivers and really push that interaction, that positive community interaction that school bus drivers have.
Well, Taylor, another big thing that I thought of too, I was talking to somebody about, was how do school bus drivers dress? How do they look when the kids see them or the parents see them? And this almost dovetailed perfectly into Patrick Mulick's presentation, because there he was talking about the school bus driver that went viral, right? Talking about de-escalation, talking about that is the image that people see, the bias that's created against school bus drivers, because is that the picture of all school bus drivers? Comically though, if you're a fan of The Simpsons, you've got Otto, right? He is the epitome of that stereotypical school bus driver they created in this cartoon. But that's how they view school bus drivers. That is the unconscious bias against them. Regardless of how nice they are, or how great of people they are, people don't know who they are. But just by their appearance, people are judging them in lots of different ways. So it's so interesting when you start to break it down at that level. And as Sylvie said, and Ryan talked about it, when people put things on your back, he said, oh, you got all these nice things on your back. He says, oh, you're all liars, right? The world's not that nice. We're maybe nice in this room, but the world is not that nice. People say unkind things. So it's just one of those things you have to be very aware of, I think, as a manager. What is and how does your drivers, your team look, and everybody is representing your business. And, one of the examples Sylvie gave at the Director Summit, and it was kind of a role-playing thing. She basically said, hey, a mechanic in your operation says something derogatory on social media and it goes viral. Well, guess what happened to a school bus driver? We saw it, right? And it's just one of those things. What is the long-term impact that we really can't measure? That really kind of always blows my mind with those kind of things, is how does that really affect us as an industry as a whole?
Absolutely. And speaking of Jackie Miller, she's the school bus driver in the Cleveland area who went viral on TikTok. And of course, we've written articles on her and written about the overwhelming, response that she got. A GoFundMe page ended up earning her over $125,000. And Patrick touched on that. And Patrick said, hey, what was disturbing to him was all the people that were saying, that's right. F those kids and all these things. And there were a lot of school bus drivers and student transportation personnel who were, definitely in support of her. But there was a lot of other people, just parents, people in communities that were like, yeah, these dang kids. And granted, yes, we know that behavior on school buses is the leading distraction for school bus drivers. And in Jackie's case, she's an asthmatic, and they were just, basically poking the bear for not just, that day, but for almost 2 full school years. And she just had enough. And she admitted, hey, she shouldn't have done what she did, but she just had enough. And she resigned, and she was just going to retire. And then this windfall came her way. But Patrick was really saying, hey, that's the bigger conversation here, is we're supposed to be a community, an industry that's all about kids first. And he was just, shocked by the reaction to it from folks. Not necessarily, I think, to Jackie's reaction. And Jackie, again, was apologetic. And, but before we talk about Patrick, let's go to a message from our friends at Cummins.
I got a message from Cummins, powering customers through innovation and dependability. Cummins is the school bus powertrain leader with more than a century of innovation and the experience you can depend on. Cummins can meet your sustainability power needs no matter where you are on the path to zero emissions. Whether it's advanced diesel and renewable fuels or battery electric or hydrogen fuel cell, customers trust Cummins to have the right solution. With the launch of Accelera, they're accelerating to shift to zero emission vehicles by pursuing the most promising technologies, not betting on a single path, but developing an array of cutting edge solutions. Learn more at Cummins.com. That's Cummins.com. Ryan, I know you were in Patrick's session and the audience was really moved by everything that was going on, but de-escalation is a big thing, right? We're almost talking about triggers, right? Like what sets you off. And I know Patrick went through this kind of exercise saying like, hey, turn to your neighbor. And I was sitting next to you and another gentleman, and we were all kind of sharing what triggers us. Like you kind of know what your triggers are, where you escalate. And then how do you de-escalate yourself, right? How do you kind of like bring yourself back? Where Patrick said he gets really quiet. And like, he's just kind of like real quiet and kind of just goes into the shell and like brings it back and is like, okay, how do we address this? Right. And these were things I think the audience really kind of felt like, hey, this school bus driver, Jackie, she clearly was triggered and it escalated to a point and then it got captured on camera and went crazy. Right. And that's typically what you see, right? People are escalating to this really, high level. And it's really hard for them to come down. And he was making that analogy too with employees, with students, angry parents that are escalated, screaming at the drivers. How do you de-escalate them?
Absolutely. And yeah, Scott Denton was the gentleman sitting next to me from North Carolina. Patrick basically asked us to turn to our person next to us and ask them, what triggers you and what's maybe an instance that happened in your life that you didn't think through fully before you went and did something stupid. And, Scott and I were talking and we both agreed that, boy, thankfully, not everyone had cell phone camera and video, and we didn't have TikTok and Facebook and Twitter when we were younger. Because my gosh, I think, Scott even mentioned, we could have been canceled a long time ago. And it just shows all the pressures that school bus drivers and student transporters live with in this day and age. And like you mentioned, Tony, dealing with parents, of course, dealing with the children, dealing with their own staff, dealing with administration. We all get stressed out, right? We all have our moments. And it's just all about trying to recognize our triggers. We have to know what triggers us, first of all. And we have to understand and realize when we're being triggered so that we can stop the cycle so we don't just explode. And I'm very similar to Patrick. When something's stressing me, I get quiet. I kind of get, reclusive, if you will. I want to kind of try to think and not try to open my mouth. And then when I'm by myself, I tend to open my mouth, but I'm doing it to myself. And I'm like, Ryan, you screwed that up. And it's just all about recognizing your traits and recognizing your personality and trying to be better and lead by example, right? Too, because so many of the folks that were there in Indianapolis, they were transportation leaders. And, leading by example is so important. It was a really good, again, segue from Sylvie's talk the day before to then Patrick. And he's always so engaging. He's always a crowd pleaser since we've had him, in Reno and several times at TSD down in Frisco. He always packs them in. Folks are always excited to talk to Patrick.
And he's a board certified behavior analyst too, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. So he works with students with autism. That's kind of his day job there at his school district, Auburn School District in Washington State. But yes, he's a certified behavioral expert. He's gone to school for this, and he works with students day in and day out, and he works with school staff. And he does a lot of work with pupil transportation. So, he's a great person to always come in and ground you. And he tells great stories, and he's so positive, and he shared the wonderful news. And this doesn't seem like it's possible, Tony, but he said it was 5 years since he had a cancer diagnosis that he has since gone into remission on. And he has one more scan coming up this fall or later this summer. And if he clears that, he won't have to get ongoing scans. So just a positive guy, and really puts things into perspective for us.
Taylor, I know you caught up with attendees to kind of get their reaction at the show. What were those conversations like?
I think coming out of Patrick specifically, I was talking to a couple school bus drivers from New Mexico, and they said it was actually reassuring because they were doing things right. And a lot of times school bus drivers don't get that training that they get in the classrooms. And so for them attending the talk, they were like, oh, wow, like even though we didn't have any formal training on this, we're de-escalating these students, or we're creating a positive environment for these students without that training. So for them, it was just really eye-opening, and they were just really happy to sit in that audience and feel that satisfaction that they're doing a good job, because, a lot of the times school bus drivers or people in general just aren't told, hey, you're doing this correctly. So they really appreciated that and felt a sense of accomplishment in that.
Yeah, that's good to know, Taylor. I mean, before we go to these audio clips, which are really interesting to hear people's reaction right from the show floor. It's so cool. We're going to go to a message from School Radio. Hey guys, is reliable radio and communications important to you? Got a message from School Radio. The laws against using cell phones while operating commercial vehicles are in place for the safety and security of both your school bus drivers and your students. Taking that risk comes with a hefty fine, penalties, and even the disqualification of the CDL of the driver. School Radio specializes in providing wide area push-to-talk, two-way radio solutions for schools and school transportation that are fully compliant with all hands-free operational laws. They offer a managed service program, which includes the device, all services, all maintenance at a fixed monthly budget point. No expense infrastructure or FCC license is required. Get a demo today by visiting school-radio.com. That's school-radio.com.
Hi, my name is Rodney Pickett. I'm with Head Start, Elkhart, and St. Joe County in South Bend. We're here at the expo. Had a great time. I love the speaker, Patrick. Awesome speaker. Taking a lot from it and taking a lot back with me to help use for my drivers.
My name's Nathan Taylor. I'm Assistant Director of Transportation with Westfield Washington Schools here in Indiana. My biggest takeaway was actually this morning, from the foundation to de-escalation. There was a lot of really good information on not just what we commonly think of as why we want to de-escalate, but how we want to do that in such a way that it works better with the child of today. I think that a lot of that will be what I will be working on when I get back so that I can help my drivers all understand that we're all in this together. Thank you.
Howdy, my name is Ian Freed. I'm with CalStart. I'm based in New York. I'm a project manager for school bus electrification, and this is my first time at the STN EXPO. Today we are looking at all of the demo buses, which has been the highlight for me. It's been really nice to get a chance to see all the buses here. A lot of the buses I've seen online, and I've seen the spec sheets for them, and it's pretty nice to be able to really to get to sit in them, to touch them. And there's a ride and drive later, which I'm really excited about as well. I plan on driving all the buses.
Okay, my name is Jay Squibb. I'm from Ball Grove Community Schools, right straight north of her, 3 hours in Indiana. Jimtown High School, better known. My first expo here. One of the things that stood out for me was the charity. While we were at the directors meeting, I do a lot of work with dogs that are misplaced, and our directors came together and they raised $300 towards that cause. Other than that, I love the interaction with the vendors like this. Believe it or not, I was in a corporate world before I came into community schools, and I've been at many of these. So this is my realm. So I loved learning about all the new things. I loved the classes that were put on before the show. I think it's a wonderful thing. I think you guys do a wonderful job at it, and I, for one, certainly appreciate it.
Buenas tardes, mi nombre es Orlando Navarrete. Para los que me conocen, pues Israel Navarrete. Es mi primera vez en una entrevista acá en Estados Unidos, en una exposición. Agradecer a todas las personas que tuvieron que ver con el desarrollo de esta actividad, ya que esto pues representa el futuro, algo que debemos apoyar mucho, dejar un mejor planeta para una mejor tierra, un mejor aire, evitar las enfermedades pulmonares, y pues a eso se debe esta gran exposición, lo que es la Expo del Green Go Buses. Creo que estoy muy sorprendido por la manera en que pues todos los equipos están a la altura de las exigencias, las nuevas normativas para el aire limpio. Quizás en español pues hay que explicar un poquito mejor, ¿verdad? Para esas compañías que están actualmente pues en la parte de todo lo que es el border de Estados Unidos, en la parte sur, que me entienden el español, los invito a que vengan a ver lo que es la exposición de los buses escolares Green Go Buses. Esto es pues para ya no contaminar más el ambiente, para evitar los altos costos de mantenimiento de combustible, aceites, partes. Con estos nuevos autobuses pues se superan muchas cosas, se moderniza todo, y estamos dejando un mejor mundo a nuestros hijos, a nuestros nietos. Creo de que es lo mejor que puede haber el desarrollo. Felicidades a las autoridades de Indianápolis por este gran evento. Esperamos que lo puedan presentar en California, en Florida, en Texas, porque esto es maravilloso y es algo que conviene pues a todas las personas. Gracias. It's very important right now, the use of school buses electric here. This is the new future and the clean air for Earth. I try to explain this VUY International Blue Air and any company here in Expo Indianapolis. Come drive one bus, test one bus, because these school buses is the future for a new generation. Thank you.
Mike LaRocco, I'm the state director for Indiana for school transportation. The biggest thing I learned was about electric vehicles, and far more information than I've ever had in the past, particularly with the infrastructure issues that are probably going to become more important than the actual bus itself. So I really appreciate the exposure and all the information was put out there. Also, I did the advanced wheelchair training on Saturday, was really good. Some more information that I was not aware of, so that was very helpful.
All right, we're back. Outstanding comments from the attendees, Taylor. Great job on the interviews. It just really gets the feel and the pulse of the attendees on their reaction to everything that happened at the show. I know there was just so much, Ryan. There were some other sessions that were really interesting too. I know we had our Green Bus Summit where we had a big deep dive on all things green energy. And there were a lot of different providers of content. I know the Propane Education Research Council hosted our Lunch and Learn, talking about school transportation success stories in propane, right? So that was interesting as well, hosted by Senior Director of Business Development, Stephen Whaley for PERC. And they did a great job talking about all the benefits of propane, as well as hearing from districts that are using it fully at scale, about halfway in, and then one that hasn't even received their buses, but has got buses on order, which was Philadelphia Public Schools, right? So really interesting to get a broad spectrum of participants there to really talk about what they felt and benefited from going green, specifically with propane. And obviously electric was a big talk, Ryan, with the EPA Clean School Bus Funding grant being active, right? It's that late August deadline. Is it the 22nd? Is that right, Ryan?
August 22nd, yes.
Yeah, so coming up, right? So everybody's kind of drinking from the fire hose. Such a different approach than the lottery. That was the last round. So 400 million this round. So you guys are working on that. Green Bus Summit is a great place. We're doing Green Bus Summit as well at STN EXPO in Reno on July 16th, along with a ride and drive, our Green Fleet Awards. There's just so much happening, guys. Check out STN EXPO in Reno. That's July 14th through the 19th, STNExpo.com. Be sure and come. It's an amazing experience. If you missed Indy, you still want to get that great education, mingle with 1,000+ school transportation professionals. That's what you're going to do. Got to get out to Reno. Got to book your ticket. So, so much happening. Ryan, what were some of the other sessions that you went to? I know you moderated a session on GHG, right? Greenhouse gas emissions. And that was quite a sporty conversation on what fleets were doing. You want to talk about your panel and what they kind of talked about?
Absolutely. So, everyone, it's not a surprise that the EPA has its latest round of emissions regulations going into effect for medium and heavy duty engines. So, commercial trucks and buses, of course, school buses. This is nothing new to us. I mean, this is something, this is the latest iteration dating back to 2007 that EPA has been just kind of chipping away at the emissions. And school buses have gotten so much cleaner since then. So that's why you have this term clean diesel, right? So it's cleaner anyways, 90% cleaner than, 2010. But, amid all that, these regulations, it's making the technology more and more expensive. And we, folks have been dealing with that for a long time, where, diesel, the cost of diesel school buses has gone up, tied to the different pollution controls that have been added. Of course, we had this huge SCR versus EGR debate back then. SCR really won, but there's been all these other maintenance issues, right? So the total cost of ownership of diesel school buses has really gone up. So as we're looking at these regulations, they go into effect next year with the 24 model year, where it's basically targeting 0.5 grams of brake horsepower an hour, that NOx number to really drive down the engines. So the engine manufacturers have a lot of work to do to get diesel engines down to that level, and gasoline as well. But when we're looking at propane and CNG, they already meet the 27 number of 0.02 NOx. So, we talked with 3 fleets, varying sizes, talking about kind of their strategies moving forward. And, again, a lot of the regulations have to do with how the engine manufacturers add the pollution controls, and they have to continue to hit the emission guidelines over the life of the engines, and the warranties that we're seeing, being extended. So, these engines are looking to cost 20, 30 grand more than they do today. what are these districts, what are these companies doing to address that? So we had Bill Griffiths, who's the VP of Fleet for Beacon Mobility, the fourth largest school bus contractor in the nation. Bobby Williams, who's Assistant Director of Fleet Services for Cypress Fairbanks ISD in Houston, the largest school bus fleet in Texas. And then our friend Nick Meyerrose, who's a coordinator of transportation at Brownsburg Community Schools, just northwest, one of the suburbs northwest of Indianapolis. And they, again, hosted our inspector training that Bobby, was a big part of. So differing fleet sizes. Nick at Brownsburg has about 112, 88 on route. He is sticking with diesel. He's not being fazed by what's happening. There's been a lot of talk in D.C. about maybe that getting rolled back. The House and Senate both passed Congressional Review Act legislation last month, actually, to repeal that. But it's not enough votes to overturn a veto that President Biden is going to put into place with that. So we're not going to be overturning that. But I think that there's still a lot of folks out there, Tony and Taylor, who are just, they're all in with diesel. And a lot of folks that I talk to in the Indianapolis area, that they're with diesel and they don't have any plans so far to change. And it's interesting, there's a poll that we have up on our website right now and asking about essentially, what they're doing going forward. Are they afraid of this, EPA regulation? Is that going to stop them from doing diesel? And are they receptive to electric? And we just started it at the beginning of the month, but about 60% are not receptive, they say, to electric vehicles. Now, there are other fuels, right? So we brought in Bobby, we brought in Bill. They both are looking to use electric, of course. Propane is really the big one, which a lot of folks have gravitated towards. You were talking about it earlier with the PERC Lunch and Learn session. And, Cypress Fairbanks, 2 years ago, they brought in 365 propane buses in one order. Huge, right? Now they're up to about 415. So about half of their route buses are propane now. So going forward, it's going to be really interesting to see, how this rule plays out. But a lot of the feedback we got and that we were talking about on the panel was really, the direct impact is likely school districts are going to be keeping their school buses longer again. And that's this kind of cyclical issue that we've had in the industry, where school bus replacements aren't happening as quickly and haven't really been happening as quickly going back even before the Great Recession, 2008, 2009, 2010 standpoint. That's when we really saw things slow down because districts just ran out of money to buy new buses. But for decades, we've seen challenges for school districts to replace their buses. Certainly what the EPA has been doing with their emission regulations is they have been flipping a lot of these fleets over. We don't have those, dirty, smoke emitting diesels anymore. There might be a few out there that are, basically relics in some facilities rolled out every once in a while. But for the most part, everyone is, a lot greener these days, but we just know that things are going to become more green. So a lot of interesting conversations about, the preventive maintenance schedules, maybe moving more to a predictive maintenance schedule, the use of data. There's tons of technology now that's helping fleet managers really, understand the traits of their fleets, how they're running everything from miles per gallon to, emissions, parts replacement, diagnostic codes, so they can really get out in front. So if the industry does in some pockets have to keep buses a little bit longer, that we know that the total cost of ownership is, being kept at bay, that we have those green emitting school buses out there and that they're doing the job. Because in the end of the day, that's really, I mentioned this at one of the previous podcasts, school buses are tools, and the tool that best gets the job done will win the day.
How about you, Taylor? Kind of what was your reaction on some of the sessions you saw? Any standout conversations?
Yeah, so I sat in a couple that was looking at, school bus stops and driver safety, that kind of thing. And I know Ryan moderated one of them, but the first one I kind of sat in was with Dick Fisher, and he's the owner of Trans Consultant, industry veteran. Everyone probably knows his name. I know we posted a picture on Facebook and everyone was commenting that they were really excited to see him at the conference. So this was like my first real time meeting with him. I think I bumped into him once before, but a wealth of knowledge. And so he kind of like talked about the resulting litigation of school bus crashes and how your operation, needs to be prepared should something like this happen. And so he passed out a quiz at the beginning of the session, and these people were filling it out. Directors, I think there was a couple, state police from Ohio were in there, and a lot of the questions people really didn't know, or they couldn't recite them off the top of their head because they've taken this CDL class, maybe 15 years ago, or they took a training 15 years ago and nothing is really at the front of their mind anymore. And so he was talking about, how important it is to document training. When did you train? How often did you train? Who did you train? And how that can kind of help you if these cases, go to court, or if, a student gets hurt and the parents sue, how can school districts protect themselves? And so it was really interesting. I think it was about 4 hours. It was a great session. He passed out all these different handouts for people. And a lot of people were like, I'm not writing on this because I need to go back and I need to photocopy this and give this to every single one of my drivers or everyone in my operation. So it was really cool to have that interactive piece.
Yeah, and Taylor, you were mentioning the session that I moderated on safe school bus stops. It was interesting because right when we were heading out to Reno, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration posted a notice for proposed rulemaking on not only automatic emergency braking, which a lot of vehicles have now, and school buses do too. It's part of that whole collision mitigation suite that is now standard on some buses and optional on a lot of others. But what was really kind of eye-opening to me on that one is they also have a pedestrian automatic emergency braking feature that they want to see promulgate throughout all vehicles. So we're not just talking again about school buses. This NHTSA rule is looking at all vehicles, light duty, heavy duty. So when we're talking about this PAEB, pedestrian automatic emergency braking, not a lot of manufacturers have that. Now, a lot have the AEB, but not the PAEB. And what we're looking at with that is, think illegal passing. If more and more vehicles eventually get this type of technology, that the vehicles would proactively sense pedestrians and stop for them. Now, there are aftermarket solutions that certainly are available to the school bus market and to other folks. And, technology, it has taken a while. I mean, it's not without its bugs. So it will be really interesting to see how this plays out. Now, this is something that if it goes into effect, would not go into effect for another 4 years. But it's interesting to see the potential, marriage between this NPRM and things that we've reported on and that we presented at STN EXPO Reno last summer, with automatic warnings that are coming up on driver or motorist dashboards. Like a project that Audi is currently doing with Applied Information. And we had that in STN EXPO Reno. We've written about it. So, really interesting. Now, again, this just was, coming out of the oven as we were actually having the session. So didn't really have a chance to talk about it. We did talk about technology, but that session was all looking at not simply illegal passing, but really looking at school bus stop safety. And how do we create the stops? How do we audit the stops? Dick talked about the commercial driver's manual. And there's certain procedures for making stops. There's recommendations. And again, a lot of the folks, they weren't quite sure. So when it comes to school bus operations, so much always comes back to the people, the training. We can talk all about the different technology, but this is really a people business. And so continue to invest in people, give them the tools that they need. And that means the leaders really brushing up and knowing where the regulations are, where the recommendations are, so they can influence those conversations, influence that training, again, to make an incredibly safe industry even safer. That's the goal as we look to, can we get to zero fatalities? That was really the, part of the name of that session. So, really great conversations.
Wonderful, guys. Well, this is a great recap. Excellent discussion. We're pretty much at time. So want a special thanks to Ryan Gray, Taylor Ekatani for coming on, sharing your thoughts about STN EXPO Indianapolis, all the happenings. Thanks to our sponsors as well, TransFinder, School Radio, and Cummins for being a big supporter of the STN podcast. Couldn't do it without you guys. Don't forget, guys, STN Expo in Reno, July 14th through the 19th, stnexpo.com/west to learn more. We got the full agenda, Green Bus Summit, Transportation Director Summit. There's so much happening. Trade show is sold out, over 120 exhibitors. We're doing that Green Bus Ride and Drive. There's new technology that's going to be at the conference that no one's ever seen before. You got to come see it for yourself. Check out STN on social media as well as our LinkedIn, Facebook page. Lots happening there, as well as all the content and coverage from STN Expo in Indianapolis. So can't wait to see you guys this summer. Nation, we love you. We'll see you next week.